friends, welcome to Sports Chat. Humongous week in local and regional sports. Start off the big historic first home win for the Cougar soccer team.
Yeah, was it Gibbs they beat up here last Thursday? Really good performance. 6-0. I mean, Shane Wolfenbarger has got the guys playing hard. Exciting sport. Lots of high-speed running, collisions. You know, it's almost as rough as football. Really great athletes out there. It takes a lot of stamina to go out for 60 minutes and pretty much constantly run for an hour.
And it was very heated. There were many of the dreaded yellow cards handed out during the game, and even one red card.
Yeah, there were some heavy collisions, but
here's
exciting soccer.
Here's the thing about that Gibbs team. That Gibbs team and Campbell County's team, a good hunk of them, play on a traveling squad together in the summer, and Gibbs' coach is their coach. And it was actually Jack with the assist. It was Colin Pittman with the goal.
If it's like soccer, that's still considered a goal.
I think it's
maybe a score. It's still a point.
It's a point.
I know soccer in hockey, an assist, if you pass it to someone and someone passes it to someone who scores, it's still considered an assist in hockey. 2 passes out, but I'm not sure how similar the rules are between hockey and soccer. But either way, exciting setup. You know, Campbell County, they don't. Not only do they win, they score a lot when they win, and that's one of the big contentious parts of soccer. Occasionally, is that you go to the game and it's 0-0 the entire game, and then maybe it's decided on
the penalty kicks,
which maybe it's just ends in a 0-0 tie. But Campbell County, they get up and down the field, they score, they got good goalkeeping. And I say Coach Wolfenbarger, busiest man in Campbell County, just about it, besides possibly Josh James.
Or Cody Parker.
I count Josh as being extra busy because he's planning a wedding right now, too.
Well, that's true.
But, Coach Wolfenbarger's got to play, and he's got to do it well. It's fun, exciting to watch. Beautiful looking field up there now. It's getting greener and greener every day. Good stuff.
And over the weekend, you had the Sea Ray Relays / Volunteer Classic.
Yeah, they combined the Volunteer Classic and the Sea Ray Relays. They just call them the Volunteer Relays this year. Either way, it's a big event in the region, approximately 25, 30 track teams. Generally in the southeast. It's not quite as, it didn't look to be quite as expansive of a field as you occasionally would get with the Volunteer Classic, which had teams from Canada and other places in it. But still a big field, tough competition, and Campbell County did really well in it, especially the girls.
Rachel Nelson, she really set the pace. She came in third in the 100-meter hurdles. And, to put that in perspective, a few years ago, you had Kendra Miller and Kristen Chapman in that same race, and neither of them placed remotely that high. And granted, it was a bigger field.
So it's a much bigger field, but still, it's still a good accomplishment. Neither of those, and both those two were high quality track athletes, and generally finish around 15th or so, 12th to 15th in the meet, which is still very good for the level that was there. But the future is really bright for Campbell County. Rachel will be back next year. She's only a junior. Bryce Dossett,
freshman phenom.
Freshman this year. She set 2 personal records. She ran a 12.6, approximately 100.
She was less than half a second away from winning that race.
That was good enough for a 4th place finish overall. 200 meters, she ran just a little over 26 seconds, and the 200, I think 26:08. That was also good for a 4th place finish. Now, so she's just a freshman this year, first ever high school track season.
She placed in the high jump too, I believe it was.
Looking at the results from the state meet last year, in the state meet you run, and then you have your final top 8 sprinters that run for the state championship. And Bryce would have placed in the top 8, I think 7th and 8th respectively, in the 200 and 100 meters with those times that she had on Saturday. They were both personal records for her, so congratulations to Bryce on that.
Bryce's brother Dakota on the boys' side had a really good day. He had the best day of any Campbell County male track star.
It's a very athletic family. I mean, you got the Faulkners and the Dossetts up there.
And Gracie, she actually acquitted herself pretty well. The distance races were a very large field this year for mine, because you come to this one, you do some distance races you don't normally get to do, like the steeplechase.
Gracie's also a freshman, and she finished in the top 30 in the state this past fall in the cross country, which runs in the fall, in the 5K. And as a freshman to finish in the top 30 in the entire state, that's a really big accomplishment. She's just got the Faulkner genes in her. I mean, it comes from her grandfather and her great uncle, and down through her father, mother,
aunts.
Just that entire family. They're all just running people. I mean, it's like they're very smart versions of Forrest Gump. You know, anybody knows Coach Faulkner. If you go to track meets up here, or if you are our age and we're in high school, he was probably your track coach if you were on the track team. But just I say, all of them great athletes. Just the entire family. She's got good genes for it, and she looks like she's going to carry on the tradition with it. Generally, your freshman to senior year improvement, I can see her and Bryce both competing for state championships, juniors and senior years.
And speaking of state champions, of course, our buddy from Cumberland Gap, Rusty Provins, Wake Forest signee, had another just dominating day in the throwing.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. I think Rusty's won 2 state championships already in both shot put and the discus event. And I'm not sure how often he does it or how he plays, but I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't place really highly in the hammer throw. I don't know if there probably was a hammer throw.
There was. I don't think there was.
See, that's when it was the Volunteer Classic.
You did the javelin and the hammer.
They had the hammer throw in that and the javelin. That's rare. Both of those are rare for high school meets. I'm not sure why, but you don't often see those at high school meets, so the technique is not always there for them. But he placed really highly in both of those events with some big-time seniors.
And just like as a freshman, Tyler Green did really well in the javelin throw a couple years back.
Shayla Goins did really well in the hammer throw that she never really throws, but it's just he's a throwing machine. I mean, Cumberland Gap, I assume he's probably still the one-man track team.
He is. He is.
He's going to be probably the only state champion they have in their trophy, maybe ever, or at least for a long time. And this is a one-man team. He owns all the school state titles.
Yeah, and it's just, I said, he's going to probably have a really impressive college career like his dad did.
Yeah, I believe that Paul was an NCAA champion at Tennessee.
I think he was in the shot put, I believe.
And,
even though the discus was considered his better event, he just had one of those days.
He's a big-time guy. Campbell County's produced some, very good track athletes, especially the field events. As we said, Paul won an NCAA championship, and Aaron won an NCAA championship in the probably 94, 95-ish, throwing at Tennessee. And, of course, he's parlayed that into a strength and conditioning career with some major college. I'm not sure where he works now. I assume that he probably left when Lane Kiffin was...
Actually, last I talked to him, he was still at USC. Of course, that was a month after Kiffin left, though. See,
I assume he would probably... the new guy may have brought in someone new, but, Aaron's just really good at it, and he would have loved to have stayed at Tennessee, but, Dooley didn't offer him the job, another one of Dooley's,
blunders.
Program burying mistakes.
The baseball team has had some good days. They had 3 wins in the last week. Played Clinton today. I'm not 100% sure what the score of that game was. It's going on right now still.
Well, Coach Browning, everything he touches up there, eventually he gets it on the winning track. And I had no doubt when he took over baseball, that's what would happen. It may take a while. Baseball's all about having good pitchers. You just don't have good pitchers every year in baseball. And if you don't have good pitchers, no matter how good the rest of your team is, you're not going to be able to win at a high level. But he's getting some better pitchers in now, and it's apparently showing up on the results this year.
Right, and it's one of those things. For years and years, we just did not have a farm program that really produced pitchers for either baseball or softball. And as we saw earlier this week, the middle school program is up there playing at Campbell County. That's a good start in farming some new pitchers for the softball team. Little League baseball is really starting to take off in full swing, and we're starting to see a lot of the guys that were baseball players when we were in high school, getting this new crop ready. Like Jacob Finstead, I think coaches about 3 teams, and Jacob was a great pitcher.
I know that in baseball, that Ethan, the quarterback for Campbell County, he was a very good pitcher and one of the main starters in probably a 2 or maybe at most 3-man rotation for the middle school baseball team when he was in 8th grade. he was a starting pitcher. And I think he may have pitched as a freshman on the JV squad for Campbell County, but of course he decided to focus on football. You can't blame him for that because that's obviously where he excels and where his college career is going to take him in football in all likelihood. But he was a very good pitcher. And you lose a few kids like that along the way who decide to go to other sports. And it's tough because, like I said, there's not that many good arms out there. And when one of your best young ones chooses another sport, so completely understandably chooses another sport, but it's still rough on the team.
And, there's plenty of spring sports left. We've got another month and a half, I think, before state championships.
Yeah.
Because they usually hit right around the same time graduation is.
Generally in late May, when your regular season winds down. Mid-May, you're going to start seeing your district tournaments and things like that. And mid-May, May 10th, May 15th, somewhere in there, you're probably going to have your
sectional track
meet. Usually it's in Science Hill or
Hardin Valley. I mean, those are the two because they have superior track facilities. They really do.
That's usually one of those two places, and that's where you decide to go to the state championship levels the next week. Soccer, unfortunately, Campbell County does not get to compete because this is their first year. They don't get to compete for the district championship or have a postseason. So they may finish the season undefeated.
Right, and if folks, you need to check them out. They've got, I think they have a game tomorrow and Thursday at home.
Yeah, I mean, tomorrow, obviously, you're probably actually going to be saying this was yesterday by the time you see this, but that's unfortunately
Tuesday and Thursday at home.
But you'll know the results, even whether they got to play or not. Apparently, it's supposed to snow or rain tomorrow, and maybe a messy day. I'm not sure what the conditions for canceling soccer are. They may play through anything as long as it's not coming a thunderstorm, because there's really no dirt and mud on the field like you have to deal with in a baseball game
or baseball type game. And their next 3 games are at home. I think it goes Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, go up there and give them a look. I say it's fun.
And it looks to be free. You have no excuse not to do it. There was nobody there taking money and I was on the field level. So
I don't know that it's free though because we got there a little late. It seemed like Shane said there may be a charge for it, but even if there is a charge for it,
it's worth
pay the charge. I mean, my goodness, it's just going straight back into their pockets and helping the team out and getting them some equipment, better uniforms, possibly getting them some shoes, paying for the soccer balls. None of that stuff's free, and most sports like this are self-supporting or probably draw a little bit out of the football team occasionally. And, of course, they raise money through the parking, get the football, and concessions at football and stuff.
Various fundraisers they do throughout the year.
In basketball, they have the opportunity to run the concession stand if they choose to do so. But, they deserve to be paid, or they deserve paid admission. It's a good product on the field. There's a big crowd there, a lot of people there cheering them on.
It was there's no stands right now, so if you go, bring your own camp chair or be prepared to stand.
Yeah, I mean, eventually, according to Shane, they're going to be able to stand somewhere in the area.
And a restroom facility. It's just, we had a very wet winter. It's hard to build stuff like that when you've got that much going on.
Pretty soon, of course, spring practice will be starting for the prizes. The prizes were honored this week, I think, by Chuck Yeager. Not Chuck Yeager. Chuck Yeager's the astronaut. Was it Chuck
Ken Yeager?
Ken Yeager, yes. Ken Yeager honored the football team. I think the football team were honored by some local Boy Scouts.
It's the local Boy Scout organization, and the guy, the guest speaker, was the head of the BCS. He's a former Vandy athletic director. He's coached multiple smaller places.
Well, he's probably a jackal then if he was a former Vandy guy. Of course, Vandy replaced their athletic director, and now it all falls under control of some strange university presidency or something. But they're terrible out there anyway. But anyway, the Cougar football team was honored.
And Nick Bailey got a big award this week. I actually will have that story Tuesday in the Times, so by the time you see this, it'll be up.
Click over to it. You should be on the Times watching this, I hope.
I've got pictures and everything. Sports Information Director Parker sent it to me after I'd published today.
So I know that Ron Parker's still alive.
Yeah, I worry about him, and now that he's moving back to the private life out of the public spotlight.
It's going to be a strange world. Hopefully he sticks with his sports information then.
Yeah. Otherwise, they're going to have to get Scotty Kitts to replace him.
And that would be the only probably similar level of replacement.
Right. Scotty can get it done.
He's a hard-working man.
And also, you've got you had a lot going on this weekend in the Big Orange front.
Yeah. Jarnell Stokes went pro.
Understandable.
Respected. He said he needs the money, and hopefully he's going. It's only good for Tennessee if you can start getting players in the NBA. That's why Kentucky gets every good recruit, because the class comes in, the other class you have 5 first-round draft picks. And if you're a first-round draft pick in the NBA, and I don't know if Stokes will be or not, he'll be borderline, but if you can make a roster, you make $816,000 a year. That's the league minimum. So Stokes, even if he doesn't make an NBA roster, you make. I think Bobby Mays was making $200,000 a year, and so was Chris Lofton in Europe.
It's not bad money to play.
Yeah, you're going to go to Italy or Greece or somewhere like that. Live a few years with all your living expenses paid for. They're going to give you a car. They're going to buy your food, buy your housing, everything, and pay you a couple of $100,000, $300,000 on top of that. And the top European players, actually, if you get in the top league, I saw the other day they make $5 to $7 million a year. Some, sort of just washed up guys that went to the NBA and averaged 2 or 3 points a game. I can't remember his name right now. I remember he played for Stanford and had a big afro, but I can't remember his name.
Michael Abumake?
No, not even close. I saw he was making $7.75 million a year right now playing for a club in Spain. So that's a lot of money.
That's about half Spain's national budget, I think.
I mean, he makes big money, and if you can go ahead and go over to Europe and make a lot of money. I can't blame Stokes for it. It's going to hurt the team next year, but it's called on Conzo Martin. I know I rip on Conzo as much as anybody could, but it's just, this is year 4. You should have a decent enough roster in place to absorb a few losses, especially when you've been building for the last 3 years. You've got 4 recruiting classes in, and we scrambled around. Right now, they just got a commitment today.
7-1 center.
I cannot think of his name. It's Kingsley. I'm going to call him Shacklebolt, like the guy on Harry Potter, because, you might as well. He's a big British black guy, like the guy on Harry Potter. But his name's Akuma or something like that. But yeah, he played on the under-18 team for Britain for a few years, and he plays at something called the West Wind Academy in Phoenix, Arizona.
It's a prep school.
This year. Yeah, pretty much to come and get a U.S. high school degree so he can go to college. As Patrick pointed out, he's 7'1", 250 pounds. He's a little stiff on the movement. I mean, he's not highly rated. I think he's rated 3 stars by one service and unrated by a couple of others. Because frankly, if you're 7'1" and 250 pounds and you have any decent skill whatsoever, you're going to be a 5-star one-and-done kind of player, because 7'1" players are not common, especially 7'1" with any kind of skill at all. I mean, the kid averaged 18 points and 12 rebounds a game. That's decent numbers. I mean, it's better than Pop's Najee or whatever. I can never say his last name, and Pop's averaged 2 points and 2 rebounds a game, even though he's 6'10". And 7 feet, 7'1", if the guy's a legit that. In basketball, that makes a big difference. It's really hard to shoot over guys like that. They can play defense around the rim, bother post players. And that's what Tennessee really going to have. You're going to have a lot of scoring out of your guards next year, because we don't have offensive threats in the post. And you're going to have to hope he can play defense. I mean, he's only 18, 19 years old, so he's going to be a freshman. But he really needs to be able to play defense at the very minimum, and maybe rebound some, because there's a lot to replace this year all of a sudden. And people can throw out the standard. And Bruce Pearl, after his first great exodus, it was Lofton that left, John Smith that left, Jordan Howell that left, and I think maybe Dane Bradshaw all left at the same time. But Dane may have stayed one more year after that. Anyway, Pearl lost at least 3 really highly rated players. He lost the starting point guard in Howell, basically. Or Howell started, and then Strong back up to Ramar Smith. He lost Lofton. Everybody knows Chris Lofton, as good a player as Tennessee's ever had. All-American his last 2 years. And then John Smith, who was All-SEC his last 2 years. Pearl lost those 3. And then over the summer, he had to replace Ramar Smith. So he was kicked off the team for thugging it up. And Duke Cruz got kicked off the team, which was his backup starting center. So Pearl replaced both point guards, the backup center who played about equal minutes with Wayne Chisholm. Andy replaced the leading scorer in the leading scorer in Lofton and the second leading scorer, Juwan Smith. Well, that year we won 20-something games and went to the NCAA tournament still. They played in the third hardest schedule in the country. So, I mean, people can say Conzo's going to be bad this year and it's not his fault, but if Conzo's bad next year, it is his fault because he's the one that's been building the roster for 4 years. If Pearl can lose that much, basically what was going to be the entire starting five almost, that had recruited well enough to fill in those holes. And if Martin's not, then that's Martin's fault. Should win 20 games and go back to the NCAA tournament next year. Also, we have the orange and white game this weekend. Yeah, I never like to project anything based on stats. Never. And in spring
especially
games,
playing against each other.
In spring games, the quarterbacks look great. Josh Malone looked great at wide receiver. It's a spring game. I mean, I saw guys go out year after year, and I've watched these spring games since the 80s. Guys go out year after year, and, this guy had 160 yards rushing today. And then you never see that guy even come off the bench in the season. The guy he looked great. He was, 18 for 20 for 300 yards and 5 touchdowns passing. And then he goes out and he's burning worms like Jonathan Crompton was his first 3 years. But I simply can't. You can't project anything from a spring scrimmage. You just can't do it. And the quarterbacks did look great. As I said, I think they combined to be something like 28 of 35 for 350, 400 yards and 5 or 6 touchdowns. But who knows? Show it on the field against a real defense. We'll see. I mean, right now, Butch Jones' main thing is he's beat a top 25 team already, and he's recruiting really well. And that's just the two things you got to look for.
And, early projections, of course, you can't go back. Recruiting's on the right path already again for the next class.
Yeah, it's looking, I don't know if it'll end up being a top 25 class. Probably will be in the top 25, but I don't think we're going to have room to sign a lot of players because we signed so many this year and had to manipulate some numbers. So I don't know that we're going to go and sign 25 or 30 players again. I wouldn't think we are. So it may not be quite as highly ranked of a class overall, but it's still going to have a lot of quality players. Right now, the quality players in it, it's back in the top 5, I think, right now. It's around 5th in the country. So he's getting quality recruits. He may not have as many of them. And you can turn around a basketball team in a year with a recruiting class. I mean, frankly, John Calipari does it every year. Sometimes the results aren't great like they were like last year when you lose in the NIT first round. Sometimes the results are fantastic, like 2 years before when they won the national championship or getting to play for the championship this year, which they lost, and I really love that, by the way. But that's just how it goes, and you can't turn a football program around that quickly.
Football's a different animal. It's, basketball's basically 8 guys the whole time.
Basketball, if you can get 2 really good players, you're going to have a pretty good team, a good shot at having a good team. In football, you got to have, 12 or 15 really big players, 3 or 4 just super impact players, and then, that's getting close to 20 guys you got to have that make big contributions if you're going to have a really good team. And that's at minimum. And it takes a while to get that many difference makers on your team. And then the best teams in the league, you get the Alabamas and they got, they're too deep at difference making type players because their recruiting's been so good the last 5 years or 6. And it's just hard to catch up with that. It's hard to overcome. The SEC in basketball, a kind of terrible league, get a few good players and you fall right to the top 4 of the SEC. Football, you have to sign 3 good recruiting classes. Tennessee had the 5th rated recruiting class and was 3rd in the SEC this past year, maybe 4th even. That's just how competitive it is. And it's just, it takes a lot longer. I'm barring a miracle. If Butch Jones can go 7-5 next year, I think he's had a really, really good season. It's just going to take a couple of years for this big class of freshmen to actually start, being really good players.
And, on the positive side for UT too, in other sports, baseball and softball are still doing really strong.
Softball is always a good program. They're usually in the top 5 in the country. The Weeklies do a really good job. You said baseball, really good hire when they hired Serrano from San Diego, Cal State Fullerton. He had been to a couple of World Series in college. Probably the best and most high-profile hire as far as it goes for what a coach had accomplished in their respective sport. Since Tennessee hired Johnny Majors after he won the national championship in 1976.
So, there are some positives in the Big Orange Country.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a slow process, and most people are always going to view the health of the overall athletic program just by how the basketball and football teams are doing. But there's a lot more teams than that. Like I said, they do pretty well. Tennis does pretty well at UT. Track has struggled quite a bit recently,
but have had many good years.
Track is one of their best sports usually, and I say they've been on the downside. Just there was some badly managed athletics under Mike Hamilton. I'm not sure how much he had to do with it. I guess quite a bit. I don't know for sure. I never thought that he was the one pulling much of any strings. He just was a mouthpiece that got the strings pulled.
Oh, the bull gator Jimmy Cheek was in there pulling the strings.
Yeah, not really happy with Cheek. I could go on without him for a long time. I mean, the other thing is that Conzo Martin's contract, nobody knows what it is yet because they still haven't announced it. I mean, a lot of people still speculate that Conzo's here, but not happy. He didn't want to be here. Marquette, of course, some people say he was offered the job to turn Marquette. He didn't. Marquette, the president, came out pretty much and said that Conzo Martin gave a bad interview. They didn't want Conzo after that. They talked to Wojciechowski, who gave a great interview, and they wanted to hire him. And like I said, Marquette had a history anyway of hiring assistant coaches. So there's reports that Conzo's not particularly happy and not really wanting to be here, and that Dave Hart's not a huge fan of bringing him back, but you pretty much have to bring him back at this point. We'll see how much of a raise he gets. I heard at one point he was getting $1 million raise, which would just be off the charts. That would put him in the top 3 or 4 paid guys in the SEC, which when 1 and 2 make what John Calipari and Billy Donovan make, almost anybody in any other league in the country is going to be 3, because Calipari makes $6 million a year and Billy Donovan makes about 5. Of course, they have
they've earned it.
A handful of national championships and Final Fours in between the two of them.
As much as I hate Florida and I hate Billy Donovan, man can coach some basketball.
I mean, I don't have nearly as much against him as I do against that rotten Calipari. But, yeah, I mean, they make their salary, but I think 2.3 would bump Conzo Martin ahead of Bruce Pearl. Some people felt that was important. I don't know why, but it's just a bunch of money that you had to use for a buyout eventually if Conzo tanks it again, which he probably will. Pearl, on the other hand, just signed the #1 JUCO recruit in the country.
That doesn't shock me at all.
Not surprising at all. I mean, the guy can't even go on the road recruiting right now and still gets the #1 prospect in the country. He's a 6'7", 265-pound power forward, who I'm sure is probably going to eat Tennessee alive since we no longer have our 6'7", 265-pound power forward, as we discussed earlier. But, give Pearl 2 years and Auburn's going to be looking good. I mean, someone pointed out, if I was buying stock in a company right now and somebody said you can buy stock in Tennessee basketball, you can buy stock in Auburn basketball, I hate Auburn and love Tennessee, but I would buy stock in Auburn.
It's true, and I'm not an Auburn fan.
No,
I love Bruce Pearl for what he did here, but I'd rather see him out of the SEC if he's going to coach.
I hope Auburn loses every game. I know they won't, and it's just unfortunate. If Pearl ends up being at Auburn and staying in there for the next 15, 20 years, it would be just a nightmare for a scenario. I mean, that's going to put us at best 4th in the SEC because Billy Donovan, even though he's coached at Florida 1,050 years, it seems like he's only about 45 years old. And Kentucky's going to be Kentucky. I mean, if Calipari leaves, they're going to hire somebody else, and they cheat so much, they're always going to be winning. And they have the most corrupt program in NCAA history with all the various shenanigans they pulled in basketball over the years.
Just saying a lot because Calipari's coaching 2 other schools.
They burnt those to the ground as well. But, now of course, Kentucky's, all the way back to Rupp, has had to forfeit seasons and any kind of scandal you could have, paying players, shaving points. Kentucky basketball's had it if there's a scandal to be had. They're probably the dirtiest program in NCAA history for a various bunch of reasons. Not just, illegal recruiting tactics, but just everything you could be doing wrong in college they've done. Because they like to win. They don't care how they get there. Which Auburn's the same way in football. And of course, Auburn is the most penalized football program in the SEC, and that caused Alabama to go into super cheating mode. Which when Alabama ranked up 4 major sanctions cases in a 10-year period, trying to get back to relevance. Yeah, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, the SEC.
That's true. Jesse Ventura said it, win if you can, lose if you must. Always cheat. And fans, on that quote from the body, I think we're going to call it a week. We'll see you at the ball games.